everybody, welcome back to another episode of Chasing Opportunity. Josh Freeman here, Aaron Hugh on the whiteboard.
What's up, y'all?
And today we were discussing this topic of failure. Just our concepts of it, combating it, and even sometimes working with it. Just the whole idea of rethinking failure.
Right, and the way most people think of failure, and I definitely put us in that category before actually really diving deep into this content, is they think of it in a negative bias, in a negative perspective, that it has negative effects, it pulls you back, it sets you, it breaks you down, it's not good in any way.
Avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, and it seems, that seems like a logical definition of the word failure.
Yeah.
But if you look at what you would think the opposite of that would be, people who've done very well through their lives, who are very successful and wealthy, their path is often very intertwined with failures.
Right. You were just saying the Steve Jobs. You were reading that to me a couple days ago.
Yeah. Steve Jobs, perfect example. Reading his biography, that we would all think Steve Jobs was very successful.
Right.
However, if you look at his past, if you look at his professional life, he's kicked out of his company many times. He had products that didn't work, and people think like, "What? He made a product that didn't work?" Yeah, he had lots of products that didn't work and weren't popular, and were not at all what you think of when you think of Steve Jobs, like the iPhone, the iPod, iPad, whatever. And there's numerous examples. CEOs, presidents, people who start businesses, often have the story of failure intertwined with their path to success.
Sure.
And actually, you had a quote that you said in a presentation, I think back in January, something about the opposite of you asked the audience a question.
Right. The question I asked the audience was, what is the opposite of failure? And all of their response immediately, no.
You messed it up.
Messed up. It's ruining the punchline.
No, you said what is the opposite?
I said, what is the opposite of success?
Right.
And their immediate response was failure.
And that's what I said when you asked me too.
Right.
It makes sense.
Right. And I said, let's rethink it. And maybe the opposite of success is not failure. The opposite of success is giving up or quitting.
Right.
And by quitting, you're making a decision to fail. So ultimately, it's your decision.
Right, and that's our first point, really. Failure, I hope you can read that. Failure equals quitting. And quitting is not something that happens automatically. And this is only happens if you quit. Failure, like Josh said, it only happens when you quit. And quitting doesn't happen automatically. That's a decision you make. And maybe you don't believe this yet, but let me show you. This is something that kind of blew my mind when I first kind of came to grips with it. If you're here, most people, when they think of success and failure, that kind of idea of a successful life, they think of it as a straight line. They gotta find this great straight line that's going right to the top, and if they deviate from that at all, they fail. They go here, that's not quite it. That's not quite it. That's wrong. They fail. But in actuality, like we were talking about with Jobs, with Richard Branson, someone who comes to mind.
Right, yeah. He's another failure. Quick story before you continue your point.
Yeah.
A little bit of funny story. Richard Branson, I don't know if you know this, but Richard Branson actually, if you don't know who Richard Branson is, I really encourage you to Google and look at some of his work. He's a great entrepreneur. Virgin Airlines might be a way you recognize his name. But Richard Branson, back in the day, created a birth control. His company created a birth control.
Oh yeah.
And it failed. It didn't take off. But when he released his product for birth control, a woman sent him a letter and said, "Your product failed because I'm pregnant." And 9 months later, she sent him a picture of her child and wrote a letter saying, "Because of your faulty product, now I have a child." And he requested that he become the godfather for that child.
One way to deal with that.
I guess that's one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But point being, Richard Branson, a guy who I would think of as one of the most successful men, had a dramatic failure.
And that's the way I think most people today, including me, before I realized what it really is, would think of failure. I would think like, okay, you set out in his case to make like a birth, birth prevention, and it didn't work.
Right.
So that would just automatically seem like failure. But you Google Richard Branson, if you know who he is, that doesn't.
You're not going to find that. No, good luck finding that. Right.
So this whole idea of you moving forward, and there's this one line, and if you miss that line, that's it.
Yeah,
That's
you failed,
crazy.
you're done.
Like,
yeah.
if you look at countless examples throughout history, it looks more like this. You know, you start here, you're born ground zero, you start moving toward this success, this goal, this aspiration, a dream, whatever it may be. You start doing something. This goes great, but then something goes wrong.
Right.
You know, you have a mistake. You hit adversity, and that is always going to happen. Adversity is unavoidable, which is actually our second point up here. So I'm just going to write that up. We'll go right back to it. Adversity.
Hear that? Something's happening.
Unavoidable. Awesome. I hope you. That's pretty sloppy. It'll work though. So adversity is going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you do after that, like he dealt with that situation, he moved forward. Jobs created something else, started a different company. Edison, you know, tried a different way to create the light bulb. You know, Josh tried another way to not be such a loser. Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, I'm just kidding. I've been kidding. All right, and then so you move forward.
Right.
You move forward. You keep going up. And it looks more like that. You know, you constantly are learning from these mistakes, but you're still going in that same direction. And that's what goes back to this. Failure is quitting. Failure is when you hit that first point of adversity, which is unavoidable, right?
Right.
And you stop. You quit. So that's where most people live. They try something, they do it, and then they go right back to being average. And it cripples people. But that's a much better way to explain it, I think, and just kind of seeing it from that point of view. And a quote, one of my favorite quotes by Lance Armstrong is, pain is temporary. This is all pain. You know, you mess up, you know, you try something, it doesn't work. You apply to this college, you don't get in. You try to get this grade on this exam, doesn't work out so well. You know, wherever you apply for this job doesn't work. That's pain. It's temporary. You can get through that. Just drop my marker. Thank you. However, quitting lasts forever. So pain is temporary. Quitting lasts forever. So if you go for that job and you don't get it, and you decide, I guess I'm not cut for that occupation. You want to go into engineering, doesn't work out. That first job you apply to, you quit. That's failure. And that's our first point too. So I think that long rant, all just to say, failure is you saying, I'm done.
Right.
So failure doesn't happen automatically.
Right.
It happens when you say, like you said, I don't want to be successful. I'm done. You know.
And moving into our third point, which is going to be proof of progress. If you notice, a way to rethink failure is each of these steps is going to be proof of your progression, a proof of your progression to the goal. And I know I have a story that aligns closely with this and kind of was my moment of rethinking failure. I recently, about a year ago, was making this presentation for a large prospect of ours with the company I work for, and the president saw this and kind of threw it out the window. He's like, no, this is actually not at all what we want to show them. Nope, we're doing something completely different. Now I'm taking over. So I kind of was thinking, wow, I really failed. I really dropped the ball on that.
Yeah, you hit that first.
Right, I hit that. I'm like, I'm done. That's it. And I remember going into the little break room, little cafe area, getting a cup of coffee, and thinking, you know what? This failure, this what I thought to be failure, it's actually just the potential to grow. It's proof of my progress, that I'm moving in a forward motion, that I'm actually not stagnant, that I hadn't quit, that I was still on the journey to my goals. And I actually began getting excited about it, which is an odd thing.
Yeah, and you start to feel encouraged about it.
You do,
Like, I feel very encouraged, and it seems so weird, but if you've experienced it, you probably know what I'm talking about. I feel very encouraged when I mess up or fail. Just because, like you said, it's proof of progress. It means you're moving forward. You could not have failed, well, not failure as in the quitting fail, but you could not have messed up, you could not have done something wrong if you weren't doing something in the first place.
Right.
You know? So it's like, you know, yeah, that messes up, but hey, at least you're not here at ground zero. You know, and then you keep moving forward. All right, you try this avenue, you try that avenue, and you keep working your way to the top.
Okay, so we got proof of progress, evidence of expansion. And when I say evidence of expansion, it's a little different category than proof of progress, because when you fail, or when you face adversity, rather, and you don't quit, you're forced to grow as a person. Your character, your work ethic, your technical skills. If any of you work out, I know Aaron and I both pretty into fitness and health conscientious, but if any of you work out, you would know that in order for your muscles to grow, you actually have to tear the muscle. That's why when you use heavy weights, you're actually tearing your muscle, and that's how muscles grow. That's how you become healthier.
Same with mind, right?
Same with your mind. So when you hit a failure, and I'll take the marker for a sec, when you hit a failure, you're forced almost to grow. Not almost, you are forced to grow, and that's your evidence of expansion. So your little goal you had here, your character, your technical skills is so forced to grow that now you're making another goal up here because you're better than you were before, and you're capable of achieving that you might not have been able to achieve down here when you hadn't faced that failure.
Yeah. So this is definitely, proof that you're not lagging behind, proof that you're moving forward, and this is proof that you just broaden your horizon.
Sure. Yeah.
When you fail, it usually means that you've kind of maxed out your potential at that point of time.
Right.
But like you said, just like when you work out, your mind is, a muscle in a way. So you need to, work out your mind. You need to expand keep throwing these markers everywhere.
I don't have any more this time.
So that's great. And number 5. Number 5 is kind of refocusing all of these points before, because sure, failure is quitting. We know that now.
Right.
It's ultimately the point of where we say, I'm done. It's where we say, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I tried. This is my first step. Maybe I took 2 steps, but I'm still done. Adversity, it's always going to be there. Things are always going to go wrong. You're going to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. These are encouraging to know, but all these things don't help us unless we take action after it. Because, if we hit that first failure right here and we don't do anything about it, if we don't take the next step up or the next step out, which way we go, we're still stuck here, and that's failure. If you're not moving forward, you're failing. You have a cool quote that you wrote down.
Right, a quote I like, something I like to say.
A stagnant response to failure.
Right, a stagnant response to failure is the welcome mat.
Right?
No, you messed up my quote for me. Try again. Tell me I have a cool quote.
Okay. In fact, you have a cool quote about this.
Right.
That you said,
something I like to say.
The stagnant response.
A stagnant response to adversity is the welcome mat for failure.
Right. Yeah, which is like a fancy way of saying, look, if you mess up and you don't do anything,
you're opening the door to failure. There it is.
Yeah. So this can all be true. Look, this could all be true, and it's encouraging to know, like, okay, failure means I'm doing something good. Yeah, all right, I'm doing something. I'm accomplishing my goals. I'm messed up. Okay, I'm still moving. Are you though? You need to be moving. So if you're just being hesitant, that's not going to cut it. So I think if you could put it into 3 words, so reflect.
Right.
Reflect on what happened.
Right.
So
you need
what
to look
caused this form of adversity?
Right. You need to look back at your failure or your adversity you're facing at the time, and see, okay, where did that start? Was it a response I had? Was it somebody else influencing that? You need to reflect on the past of that adversity. Then you need to, he's writing it out here, you need to refocus. And that entails...
Where are you going?
Right. You need to take everything you know, every information you pulled from the reflecting period, and you need to refocus it and say, where do I want to go? Now that I have this information, where do we want to go?
Yeah.
And the final is to restart.
Restart, and not restart in the way of going all the way back to the beginning. Because, like in the case of Steve Jobs, for example, he started with Apple, got kicked out of the company. That's certainly adversity. That's not good. But he didn't just stay there. He started doing something. He reflected on what happened. He refocused. Where am I going? And then he restarted. He started right back where he was, and much better for the sake of it. So 1 through 4, I think, is blatantly obvious. But if you don't do anything about it, it doesn't mean anything. So that's why there's a lot of people who think failure is so wrong. And now I see, I definitely had a different perception on failure before actually reading up on this, that it's something that we need, something that we need to understand and actually take action on.
let's say we do fail. Let's say you fail. Let's say I fail. Let's say you failed, which we're all going to fail. We failed before. We're human beings. We have flaws. We're not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we can enact all of these things, I'm sure there's going to be a period in my life that I'm going to fail. You may fail, and that maybe you're going to fail. I hope not, but we're imperfect people.
We'll all fail. Yeah,
We're all going to fail.
At some
Okay,
point in time.
so let's look over here. I'm going to use this section of the whiteboard. If you do fail, what are you going to do? So this is sort of combating the idea of failure, rethinking of it, and using it almost as a tool to help it springboard you to greater things. But let's just say you do fail and you did quit. Then what? So first, the first thing you need to do, maybe you should write this out.
Sure.
Okay, the first thing you need to do is have the humility to admit you failed. You first need to kind of take a step back and go, all right, I did quit, and I need to be humble enough to admit that to myself. That's the first step. First step is admittance.
Right,
Admit failure. The second would be the courage to bounce back. The courage to get back on that success line, which can be a daunting thing to do because you're almost making yourself very vulnerable to another failure, another potential failure. And the third would be your ability to move forward. So after you've admitted your failure, after you've had the courage to bounce back, you need the ability to move forward. So using all these three things is hopefully going to be able to get you over that hump of failure and
Right.
excuse me, back on that line of success.
Right, and that is the best way, I think, to live out our fifth point. Just reflect, okay, what went wrong?
Right.
Focus, okay, here's where I'm going.
Right.
Courage to start up again. And then, of course, ability to move forward. I think, I could be wrong, but I feel like most people get hung up on the refocus part or the courage to move forward again because they hit that first thing goes wrong.
Right.
They start up a business, it fails, they lose a ton of money. To get going again would be
Daunting.
Yeah.
It's true.
But that pretty much wraps it up for today. We hope through this kind of scattered all over the place episode that you rethink failure. You don't think of it as such a negative concept, but it has actual positive influences on your career, on the lifestyle you want, on the social life you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, success is to you in goal form. Failure is going to be along that path, and you should be encouraged by it. I'm encouraged by it.
Yeah.
I know Josh, he said he was in his story, and I hope you are too. You know, when something goes wrong, it's proof you're doing something.
Right.
You're expanding your limits.
Right.
Doubt is the thing that kills more dreams than failure ever will. You saying, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I'm good enough. That's going to stop you from doing something.
Right.
Failure is just going to be like, hey, you tried it, try again. And then, obviously, take action once you fail. You got to keep moving forward. Otherwise, you're just going to, like Josh said, stagnant after adversity is the welcome mat for failure.
Right. As Aaron was just saying, hopefully this time we've had together is going to either give you encouragement or give you more information to get over that hump of failure wherever you may be in this line. Because we were just talking about it, writing stuff out on the whiteboard, and we were thinking this is going to be a good idea for a little video we wanted to share with you. And actually, I think I may have learned more from this than.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like it's something that can hold a lot of people back. So you know, I'm glad we got to talk about it with you guys. And but that pretty much wraps it up for today. Thanks for hanging with us.
Be looking out for our next episode. Adios.